will see here how the REST API works, how it's built inside Process Maker. We will learn how to register our external application to use REST. We will also take a look into some authentication methods for REST. We'll see we have two methods for this, and then we'll do our labs to register our own external application. We'll also take a look into what the Process Maker connectors are, and we will take a look into the services task functionality we have. Then we will also take a look into how to develop our external application. And for this and for today, we will just take a look into the first two labs until here, which will be the preliminary arrangements and getting a user's inbox case list from our external application. So let's start. Okay, so let's start by getting here into the introduction to Process Maker REST API link. Let me get this here. Okay. Okay, you'll find some quick introduction to what REST is right here. And as you can see, we have here our definition. So REST would just it's just a different style of coding our web applications, and given the option to use any of these methods that are commonly used by the HTTP protocol. So with REST, we're just going to connect to our Process Maker engine and just consume the endpoints that have been built inside. So here in our documentation, we're just adding some just a couple of links where you'll find the documentation or the official documentation for REST, and so you can take a deeper look into it and understand how it actually really works and how you can build your applications to use REST. But let's take a look up here. We have some different steps here. So these are the steps that we need to follow in order to use Process Maker's REST API. So the first thing we need to do is just register the REST application in Process Maker. Then we will have to use a couple of endpoints in order to get our access token. And then we will see some examples on how to call Process Maker endpoints. And we have here some different categories, like for administration and for the designer and for cases. So we'll take a look into this, and then we'll build our external application. So let's take a look into this link really quick here, and let's see this here. And this is the example we will be doing today using REST. Okay, so in order to get this done at the end, let's start. Let's get back here. Let me close this here. Here, let's start with the first step, which is register the REST application in Process Maker. So I'll open that same link from here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so let's take a look into this, and let's follow this step. So in order to register your application in Process Maker, first you need to make sure your user has this permission in his role. So it's the PM REST API applications. So once he has this permission, your user will be able to access this page. So let's take a look into it. I'm gonna just copy the last two parts, and I'm going to log in to my Process Maker. Let me see if I still have my session active. Yes, I do. So let's just change the last two parts. of the URL and add the OAuth 2 and applications. So if you have permissions in your role, you'll see this screen here. So let's get back here. This is the screen you'll see. And this is just a list of all the applications that are created and that have access to Process Maker through the REST API. As you can see right now, my list is not empty. I have these two applications that are the Data Reporting Tools plugin and the PM Connectors plugin. So these applications have been registered at the moment we enabled these enterprise plugins. So they are using their own application to connect to Process Maker through REST API. So we're not going to edit none of this. We're just going to create our own. So take a look at the top. We have the new button, the edit button, the delete, and details. So new would just give us the option to create our new application. Edit will edit it. Delete will remove it. And details will show us the information that we will require to connect and to establish the connections and get the access tokens using our specific application. So let's start by registering our application here. So I'll click on the new button. We'll see this screen here. So let's cancel this. I'll say new. And let me refresh 1 second. Okay, there it is. And let's see here. Take a look into this screen. We have the name field, which will be just the name of your application. For instance, the two applications we have here are Data Reporting Tools plugin and PM Connectors plugin. You can just add any name you would like there. So let's take a look into this example in our wiki. Now a name like this one here, it says Case Lister. So we can just add any name like Case Lister, for instance. There. So this could be any name. You just need to add a descriptive name for your application. And you need to make sure this is only 32 characters max. You can add a description. Like, this is my REST application. Then you have the website, and this is the website that your users will have to use to access your application and actually make it work with Process Maker. So you can enter your website here or the URL for your website. So it shouldn't be a working website right now because this is not going to validate the website's up and it's a valid one. So you can just add any information you like. Let me get here. Let's add. Okay, let's see if we can add that example. I don't think we're going to add that one. So you can just do something like my site and index.php, for instance. Okay. Then we have our callback URL, which is the URL that the user will be redirected to when the authentication happens. So imagine you have a site and you're going to authenticate using one of the methods we have, especially one of the two methods we have. We're going to take a look into that just in a moment. This callback URL will be the site that will load when the user is able to successfully authenticate using this application. So we can just leave it blank or add a callback URL. So right now for this example, I'm just going to leave it blank and I'll say register application. There. Okay, and let's take a look into this screen. This is the information that we will need to use in order to authenticate using this application. As you can see, we have the application name at the top here. Then we have the client ID and the client secret, which are two parameters that we need to use in order to get our access token later with REST. Okay, so then we have some information about the next steps. We need to get the access, make the authorized requests and get the access tokens. So this is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to take note of this information here, and I'm going to paste it in a notepad. Just open here my gedit. I'll paste it there, and I'll say this is for case lister. Okay, and I'll get this here, and I'm going to save this because it will be faster. I won't have to get back into this screen and get information. So I'm going to just close this. But if later you need to see this information again, you can just select your application like case lister and click on details, and you'll get this here. So you can just get the information and use it for your connectors. Okay, let's get out of here. Let's get back here, and let's continue. So this is what we just done. We just got our client ID and our client secret. This is the information that we are saving, and let's get back down here. So we have the authorization and login to obtain the access token, and this is actually the methods we will have to use, or we will be using, to get our access token to Process Maker. So let's take a look here, and there are actually two ways to get this or to be authorized and get the access token for our system. And the first one, and actually the easier one or the simpler one, it's the grant type to password. So we can just say we're going to use a password. That means we are going to use a specific user to get our access token and to log into our system. So that's the simpler one. We'll take a look into that just in a moment. And the other option will be the authorization code, which is a different grant type authorization that will require to approve the application from outside to give permissions to access, and this will give us a different authorization code. And with this code, we're just then we're going to get our access token. So the difference with the first one is that you just need to use your credentials or the credentials from a user, and for the other one, you first need to approve your application to be accessed from outside, then give the authorization code, and then you'll be getting your access token. So this is like a two-step login, the second method with the authorization code, and this one is just a user and password access. Okay, so let's take a look into the password grant type. This is the first method where we will be using our user and password credentials to access Process Maker. But in this case, let's take a look into some of the parameters we need to send. Okay, here. So in order to access or to consume this endpoint and get our access token, we will have to use this endpoint up here, which is this method OAuth2 and token, and take a look into this URL. We need the PM server, then the workspace, but the workspace will not be like the regular URL we have here, because here we have sys and then the workspace name. So right here it will just be the workspace name without the SYS for system. So it will just be workflow in our example. Then we have this OAuth2 class and the method token. So this will require to have some parameters to get the access token. Okay. So the token endpoint will be a post method that will return an array or a JSON object with the access token and information from our token for the process maker. So in order to do this, we'll have to launch this post method for the endpoint, and these down here are the parameters. So as you can see, the first one is grant type, and for this case will be password. Remember that the first method will be password, and the two-step authentication will be authorization code. So right now, for this example, we're going to use password. Then we have the scope, and the scope will determine which specific endpoints you will be able to use. So you have three options here. You have the star that will have all the scopes. Then you have the edit process, just to access to the endpoints that will give you access to edit or change processes. And then you have the view process, that are the endpoints that will just give you options to get information from these processes, but not to change anything. So it depends on you on which scope you will assign to this authentication method and the access token that will be retrieved. So for this example, I'm just going to use star, so I have all the scopes. Then we have the client ID code and the client secret code, which are the ones we just got from our application. So if I go back here to my notepad, you'll see that these are the two codes which is generated when we registered our application. So we have the client ID and the client secret right here. So we're just going to use them as parameters. Then we have, since this is the password grant type, we're going to use these two parameters, which are the username, and this will be the username of any user in your process maker, and the password, and it will be the password for that user. And that will be it. That's all the parameters we need to use. And if everything's okay and we actually successful get the token, we will be getting a response like this one down here. It will be a JSON object that will have the access token here. Then it will have the expires in, and by default you'll see this is 1 day access token. Then we have the token type, which is bearer. Then we have the scope, and in this case will be view process and edit processes, which is the star, right? And then we have our refresh token code that will allow us to build some methods and refresh our token so it can get another 24 hours, and it would generate another token with another refresh token to generate the next one and the next one, and so on. Okay, so since we will be getting this bearer token type, that means that we won't need another verification or another permission to log in once we have this token. So this is actually the type that we will be using for all our endpoints in Process Maker. And if we don't get a successful authentication response, then we will get some errors like this. In this case, we'll get this invalid client, or the client credentials are invalid. Okay, so let's take a look into how this will work, or how we can test And for this, I have installed in my virtual machine Postman right here, and I'll use this client to test my endpoints from Process Maker. So if you don't have Postman right now, you can just go to, you have Chrome installed in your virtual machine. Just open Chrome and look for Postman. Just open the first link on the Chrome Web Store. There's Postman and just say add to Chrome. So I'll give you a couple minutes so you can just install Postman. If you could please confirm that you have it ready so we can continue with the examples. Okay, let's continue. So we are here. We have the Postman ready and installed. So I'm going to just get rid of this window here, and I'll get this out. Okay, so here's my Postman screen, and here's the one I'm going to use for my tests. So let's take a look into this. So the first thing we need to do here, once we start the application, is change the type, and Process Maker use OAuth 2.0. So we're going to change this here, OAuth 2.0. Okay, so before we start, remember when we were checking the application register form, and we had to add a callback URL that we left blank for these examples. So in case we need to use a callback URL here in Postman, we can just get it by clicking here on the Get New Access token, and in this form at the top you can see this callback URL. So your tests can actually return, or as you can see your results or responses in Postman, you will have to use this one. So we can copy this link here. I'll just copy this. Let me get back here. And I can just say here edit. And I can add that callback URL. And I can just save the changes. So right now, callback URL will be required only when we are using grant type authorization code, not for the password grant type, but we can just have it here ready. It won't have any effect with the password grant type, so we can just add it here and save the changes like that. This would update the data. Let's give it a second. Oh, let me double check. Maybe I have just lost my session. Yeah, that's the problem. I lost my session. So I'll get back here. Case lister, edit, and I will add my callback URL. Now save this. There it is. See the details. Just in case, I will copy this again to my notepad. Here it is. Okay, so I have this here. Let's close this. Just close this window here. Okay, and let's get back here. So these are the parameters that we are going to use when we're going to work with this password grant type. So let's start doing this example and trying to get our access token from or using Postman. So let's take a look to the endpoint here. So the URL will be HTTP. Oh, let's take a look up here. This is a post method, so we will change this to post, and we'll type HTTP. And let's say process maker, because that's the name we have for our process maker, or it could be the IP address with the port, and the workspace will be just workflow. OAuth 2 and token. Okay, so this is our URL, and now we're just going to set our parameters. So this is a post call, so I'm going to send this in the body, and let's scroll this a bit here. Okay, so we're first going to send the grant type. So let's say grant, grant type, like that, and value will be password for this example. Here it is. Then we will add another key that will be the scope, and this will be star. Then we will add client ID, and we're going to copy the client ID from our application. I'll get it here from here. Here's the client ID. I'll just copy this one and paste it here. Then we'll use the client secret, and I will also get it from here. Now we'll just paste it here. Great. Now it's time for the username. And for my example, I'm going to use admin, and the password will also be admin, like that. Okay, so here are my parameters in the form. Here. And let's take a look. I'm just going to say send. I'll click on send. Oh, my URL is bad here, like that. And let's just click on send again. Let's see. Let's see what happened here. Let's say okay. So, sorry. Let me create a new one really quick. Let's copy this from here. Put it here. Post. And form data will be okay. Grant type. password, client ID, client secret, username admin, and password admin. And just let me double check my process maker. I don't remember if I left this. You remember the enhanced login to prevent user from connecting from different devices and IPs. Let's take a look into that. So I'll come here. Okay, everything's disabled, just to be sure. Okay, here it is. So this would just, if everything's okay, this would just give me this response, this JSON object with the access token, the 1-day expire date or expires in time, the token type, which is bearer, so it won't require another authorization when we try to use this access token, the scope, and the refresh token code. So I can also get or take note of this, or just let's take a look what happens if I just use a different username. So let's say this is the username I'll try, and here I have provided invalid username and password combination. So I can just say admin, and there it is again. Or we can just use a specific scope, like edit process. I'm sorry. Edit process. Extend it. And unsupported scope was fine. Let's see. Here. Edit process. I don't know what's wrong. Should be the same for view process. Okay, I'll take a look into these scopes. Maybe I'm just typing something not the right way. So I'm going to use start again, and here's my access token. And I'm also going to take note of this token, and I can just save it so you can use it later for your other endpoints. So that will be there. Let's get rid of this window here, and let's get back here. Okay, so everything went just okay right now. So we right now have our access token, and we can just use this access token to log into Process Maker and consume this endpoints. So we're not going to take a very deep look into these PHP examples because we're going to build our own application later. So there we will take a look into all the code that it will involve. But basically, you can just build your params array, then just use CURL to upload or fire or use your endpoints. So basically, it's the same concept. You're just sending the body parameters in this array. you will start connection with this token endpoint, and there you just send the parameters. You can verify the response, and therefore you can just add the code you need. So right now it's really simple because this is the simpler way to do it, using the password gram type, just using the username and the password. Let's scroll down a bit. Here is the PHP example. We also have these other JavaScript examples down here, or jQuery examples, which is basically the same, just sending the body parameters and then just calling the endpoint. Let me get back here, or get down here. So this is the other authentication type, which is the authorization code, that will provide a code to users so they can use this code to get the access token and then get the authorization. But in this case, this will be more like a two-step authentication method. So let's take a look into it. Okay, so let's get down here to the example, and for this we will be using a URL that we will build in this way, and we will use this in our browser. Since this will be a get method, then it can be just used in the browser. So let's try to build this URL for our example. So for the example, I'm just going to build the URL here in my notepad, and then I'm going to paste it in the browser. So let's do something like this, and let's try to build it. So we'll say HTTP process maker, this. Then we have, let's move this down here. We have the workspace name, that will be workflow, like that. Oh, sorry. Go out 2. And then we'll say authorize. And let's add our variables here. So response type. Oh, sorry. Response type. We're expecting to get our code. This. The client ID. We will use this one here. That's the client ID. And again, this scope, that will be star. Oh, I don't know what happened here. Let's see. Scope will be star. Okay, so let's take a look. We have the server, the workspace, our OAuth endpoint, and we have authorize, that's the endpoint. The response type will be code, client ID, and the scope will be star. Looks we are okay. Let's copy this one here, and let's just put it here. So if there's not a session open in Process Maker, this will ask me to log in by showing me the login screen. But if there is a session, an existing session, then I would just see this screen asking for approval for this application. So I'll click this there and take a look. Right now I do have a session open here. that's why I'm seeing this. And I'll just say approve or deny to allow this application to log into Process Maker using or getting the authorization code. So before we do this, let's get back here. So as soon as I will click on approve, I will be redirected to this callback URL, and it will return the authorization code. So the authorization code is the one I'm going to use, and I'm going to use Postman just to get the access token in this way. It will be just the same post method we saw with the user name and password, but this time the parameters will be different because I'm just going to use the grant type, the code, and this code will be actually the authorization code that we will be getting with this method, and then we'll just use the client ID and the client secret. So let's take a look here. I will say accept, and here it is. Here's the callback URL. As you can see, it's using the callback URL from Postman, or I could have added any other callback URL that will actually give the response. So I can either do this here or use Postman to get the callback URL there. So right now I'm going to use this code to access using Postman and get my access token. But for that I will have to create one more here, a new tab, and let's say post here, and I'll say HTTP process maker workflow OAuth2 and token. This is my endpoint for the access token, and let's get here to the body, and let's start with the parameters. So let's get back here and take a look here. We have grant type authorization code. So let's get back to Postman. Here. Now we'll just say grant type authorization code. Okay. I'll say code, and I will paste this code. Oh, 1 second, I don't know. Let's just paste it. I'll get the one from here. Let's copy this one. There. Then I have the client ID and the secret ID. So let's get back here. Client ID and secret ID. Okay, and I'm going to get this from my notepad. This is the client ID. There. And my client secret. Here. And there it is. Okay, looks like I'm ready, and I'll say just send. And let's take this response. The client credentials are invalid. Invalid client. And that means that maybe our code has expired, or maybe we have provided non-valid credentials here. So let's take a look here. Actually, this code that we are getting up here in the callback URL will just last for some seconds, and right now we just took more than that time, so this probably has expired. So in order to get a new one, I'll just click on back. I will say accept again, and this will give me a new code. Let's see if we can now use this one really quick from here. I'll paste it there and say send. Okay. Okay, credentials are not okay. Let's see what happened here. Authorization code, that's the code. Let me see if I have the same client ID and client secret. Looks okay. And let me just double check. Let's see what we have here. Client ID. Let's double check because I just missed something. Get a new one. Okay, let's get back here. Let's see if we can get the code of this client. Raw credentials. We have down here. Okay, let's see this. And we have our responses when we have an error. Like for instance, we have invalid client credentials are invalid. Let me get the notepad. Oh, this is my problem here. This is client secret. I don't know why I added that secret ID. Send this. Okay, now it's okay, but take a look into this. It's telling me the authorization code has expired. So let's get a new one from here. I'll just say accept again. This will generate a new code. I will copy this code from here and let's get it here. Let's replace it and click on send, and there it is. Now I have my access token. Response will be the same as for the credentials, but of course this time I'm doing a two-step authentication, right? Because I first need to get the access code, the authorization code, and then I'll get the access token. So I can also save this here. I'll get back here to my notepad. So this one's for password, and this one's authorization code. There. Okay, so the mistake was mine here with the client. I just typed secret ID and not client secret. And okay, now let's take a look here. I can get rid of this screen. And right now we are ready to use our endpoints because we have our access token. We can just call these methods and use the endpoints from the different categories. So again, for these examples we have here, we're just going to use the labs to see how it works from these ones right here. Okay, so let's get back down here, and we do have some existing tokens inside Process Maker, and in order to get these access tokens, if you need to use them somewhere in your process, you can just query one of your tables, and the table will be this OAuth access. So you can just query it and get the access token that will belong to the user UID you would like to get the access. So for instance, if you're using your admin account, this will get the access token for the admin. You can just get it and use it in any method you need, like doing it in JavaScript or just doing it in your triggers. So we can take a quick look into this table here. Oh, let me open this in a new tab. And this is root process maker. Let's see tables. Let's look for OAuth. Access tokens. Okay, here they are. So these are the access tokens that I just created with my admin user here, and these will expire tomorrow, as you can see here. So you can query this table, get a token, see if it's valid, of course, and then just use it. Okay, let's get here. And for the error response, here's the list of all the error response we have when we're using this endpoints. So you can take a look into the response and see which one you're getting. So it could provide you some information in order to identify what the error is. Okay, so let's just close this one, and I'll also close this one. Here are the authentication methods. Sorry. And let's start with the labs here. So these labs will be basically the same we just did here. So let's take a look into this one. And as you can see, this one would just ask us to create or register a new application. So let's do it again, but this time following this lab. So let's log into Process Maker. Let's get to the applications page. Let me refresh this. Okay. And for that, you just need to remove the last two parts from the URL and say OAuth2 applications. There it is. So there's our applications list. And let's get back here. And let's create our application. Okay. So let's take a look into these examples. And let's say here, my Process Maker external app. I'll say new. and my process maker external app. That, let's see the description. Let's copy this one. Sample REST application to manage cases from a user inbox. And before we continue, after finishing this lab, we'll take a look into some examples. The website will be university.processmaker.com. Some examples on how to call it or use the methods we have with REST. Let's get this one here. And we are not going to add this callback URL because we're going to use for the examples the password grant type. And like I said before, password grant type doesn't require to have the callback URL. But the two-step authentication does require the callback URL because that's where it will give you the access code. Okay, that's it, and let's just finish this lab. So I will just create this. I'll register this application, and this will be the client ID and the client secret. So let's get here. I'm just going to move this here, and I'll get that saved there. Okay. And let's get back to the cars. Here it is. Great. So before we continue with the other two labs, which are Process Maker connectors and service tasks, let's take a look into how we can use these endpoints we have in Process Maker. So what I'm going to do is just get back here to, I think we have documentation in this link. Now let me get to our wiki. We have this section here, which is the REST API here, and we have these three sections, which are the administration, designer, and cases. So let's take a look into administration here, and you'll see we have different categories or group or endpoint groups that we can use to administrate information in our process maker. So let's take a look here. For instance, we can take a look into these users. As you can see, we have some endpoints here. So that get users list, get user information, create a user, upload a user image, update user information, or delete a user. So let's take a look into these endpoints with quick examples. So let's start with this one here, get user list. And as you can see, we have a detail here on what they are, what the parameters for this endpoint are. So we have the filter, we have start and limit, and this is just how many users you're expecting to get as the response, like this. So let's take a look into this example, and for this I'm going to use my Postman here. Let's create a new tab. As you can see, this endpoint is get method, so I'll use get method, and let's get the URL. So for this, the URL would always be like this: HTTP, the server, process maker. Then we'll say the workspace, that will be workflow. Sorry, not the workspace, I'm just getting the token again. It will be the API, this time 1.0, workflow, and now the specific endpoint that or method that will be user there. And let's take a look at this definition. As you can see, filter, start, and limit are actually optional parameters, so I can just leave it there like that. But now I need to add some headers before I send the information, because this needs to do the authentication using our access token which is created. So this will be authorization, like this, and we will say bearer. Remember the method was bearer, and then we will have to use our access token. Let me get back here. Let's use this access token right here. This. And let's say beater, and I'll give a space there and just do this. Okay, that's my authorization, beater, and the access token of that. And let's take a look. I think that should be it for this endpoint. And there it is. I have the list of users coming from my workspace. And as you can see, the list is very large. So I have each user, which is the ones I have in my system, with all the information for each user. Okay, this is a get method, so we don't need any body or anything or any other form data in the body. So let's take a look into another one. This is the response we're actually getting. As you can see, we have all the user information, and for all the users. Scroll up a bit. Let's take a look into this one, like get user information. And in this case, we'll use the endpoint or the method user, not users, and then we'll add some users ID. Do that really quick here. Now we can copy this URL. Here it will be user this time, and then we'll have to add a user ID. So we can get any ID from here. So like, for instance, I can get this admin user. Let's put it here as the other part of the URL. Okay, let's take a look here, just the user ID. We also need the headers, so this will be authorization, this beater, and let's get it from here. It will be the same. Beater, and let's just say send. And there it is. This is the user information. Of course, only for this user. Let's take a look into the other ones. Like, for instance, we have this. This is also get. And let's see this one, which is the post method to create a user. So this time we're just going to say post and say user. So let's take a look into that. Here, let's create a new one. Now let's copy this here, and now it will just be user. Okay, with this will be post here. So we'll add the headers, authorization, beater, and let's copy the access token from here. From here. Okay, there. And this time, since it's a post, we'll have to define the body parameters. So let's say here, let's see here what we need to add. And we have all these parameters to send for our new user. So let's use these ones. Take a look into this list. We only need to add parameters onto this part, or up to this, because all these other are just optional. So let's just use those parameters. This will be username, and let's say this will be, I will create my user like Ronald. First name, say Ronald. Last name will be Richter. User email, processmaker.com. User due date, and let's say 2019 0101. User status active. User role, oh sorry, it's not here. User role will be process maker admin. User new pass will be 123456, and user confirmation for the password will be 123456. Okay, let's take a look into this. Looks good. Let's send this, and there we are. This is the response we just get. This is the result you will be getting. A list of the user with all the parameters you just sent. So my new user should have been created. And we can test it. We can just use this ID and go back to the other user and use that ID here. Send this, and there it is. It's getting the information from the user. Okay, and we can also remove the user like this. And let's take a look. Let me get back here. Let's create a new one here, and this will just remove the user using the same the URL we have. Like for this one here, we just need to send the user UID, and it will remove it. So the method this time will be delete. We'll send this URL to delete the user, and of course we need the authorization. And let's copy this one from here. Headers. Let's copy this one and just add it here. Okay, so let's just send this here. And in this case, of course, we don't have any response because it's just deleting the user. But in case we will have an error, then this will happen. We will get this error here. So for instance, if I run this, there it is. It says that the user with this ID doesn't exist because it has been just removed, and we can't remove it, right? Okay, so these are some of the methods to administrate users using REST. Let's get back here. I'll click here. Okay, it will be the same with groups. Let's take a look into the groups to administrate. As you can see, we have the groups, members from a group, the available users. We have the assigned users to group. We have this get group information. So it's basically all of these are just the same methods we just saw with the users. So I'm going to go back here and take a look into other category. Like let me close this. For instance, we can see this designer category, and we can take a look into this endpoints or methods we have here. So as you can see, we have here a lot of our categories or subcategories for the methods that will allow us to interact with our processes. So we can just take a look into some of these. Like for instance, we can see this steps, or well, we will have to get an activity or a task first. So let's take a look here to activities, so we can get some UIDs and then use them for the other endpoints. So take a look at this one. This will get the tasks or activities inside a process or a project. So for this we'll need a project ID, then use the activity method, and then use the activity ID. So let's get this from a process. What I'm going to do is just let me get here to my process maker. Okay, I'll get to the designer, and let's get one of these processes. Let's see this one. Okay, edit process, and here's the ID for my process. I'll use this one, and let's get back here to our get activity method. So this is also a get method. Let's take a look here. Let's create a new one. Oh, I'm going to copy this authorization. Okay. So I'm going to do this. This is a get method. Let's say header authorization bearer. Oh, what happened? Remove this. Let's copy the one from here. Copy. There. And let's type the URL. So we're going to say HTTP process maker API 1.0. We'll see, or we will say workflow project, and the project ID will come from here. Copy, and let's put it here. Oh, where happened? Okay. I don't know what happened here. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Wow, it's not going to let me get it. Let me see what we can do here. One more chance. Oh, it's because of this, I guess. Okay. Let's do something. Let's get it from the database. So I'll get here tables, and I have this process table, or let me see. Let's just get it from here. And I think we were working with get currency. Let's get this ID here, project ID. And I will use this one here. That's it. And let's get back to the documentation here. Okay. Now let's say activity this, and let's also get an activity from here. Activity, and this will be for project UAD. Let's search one of these. It's this one here. And let's paste it there. Send this. And there it is. We have this is task 1, task description, and all the information for this task. Okay, so of course I remember we didn't set too many settings for this task, so that's why we don't have some of the parameters. Let's get back here to the browser, and let's take a look here. Oh, sorry, here. So we are here. We can update the activity, we can delete it, or we can get the starting task from this project ID. Let's go back here. Let's see what else we have in this list. For instance, we can see, oh, let's use one of these like processes here, and we'll get this project list here, and we can use this one. And let's say HTTP this. We can use this one, and let's edit it to be just project like that. The header will be authorization, and it will be better. Let's use the one from here. Okay, and that should be it. And there is, we have the list of projects we have in our system. Back here. Okay, so you can just decide on which endpoints you would like to use, or you would need to use for our system. So let's take a look into the labs. Let's get back here. Oh, and before we continue, we have to take a look into the process maker connectors and the service task. So let's take a look into that really quick here. So in process maker, in the admin tab, we should have a connectors tab here on the left menu, PM connectors. And this is because this will become enabled with an enterprise plugin, which is actually this one here, our PM connectors plugin. And as you can see, this is already enabled. It says upgrade now. You can just click on upgrade. This should upgrade your plugin. Okay, so this will enable this PM connectors tab you have right here on the left menu, just right on the enhanced login plugin. So let's take a look at it. I'll click here on connectors. Give it a second. Oh, I had lost the session. Let's see. Okay, so this is the PM connectors list. If you can see, I have three options here, three main options. I have this configuration authentication protocol where you can configure how your connectors will connect to your system. You also have this category, and you also have connectors to have your own connectors. So here you have your created connectors, and in connectors you have a list of the existing connectors inside your process maker. So here you have category, name, description, and type. And up here you have the option to either create your own connectors or download some connectors from the process maker connectors library. So for instance, if you click on create, you will see this screen where you have to enter the name of your connector, a description, creation date that will be automatically filled. Then you have a category. Right now we don't have categories. And based on the category, the information below will be filled in with the description and the logo from the category of the connector you're creating. You have the method that will be used for this connector, the URL that we expect to get the variables in it, the configuration authentication protocol. Remember that for process maker it's OAuth 2. Or you can get one of the lists or create these ones that will be coming from this authentication configuration authentication protocol, and then the headers to connect. And of course down here you have the other parameters like the body that could be a JSON raw string, or it could be just form, just like we did with Postman. So it's basically the same concept here, and you can then test your connector. I would close this window, go back to configuration authentication protocol. So if you just create here, you have the option to set the name. You can select the protocol. For our case will be OAuth 2, and sub protocol if we will have another protocol created here. So you can just pick the settings you will get here, or you can use the name for this protocol and get the option here like password in our case. And you can see this is getting actually our settings for process maker that we will get, or we will fill here to do the connection. So you can also test it here, or just save it and close it. For category will be the same. You would just have to create your new categories. You enter the name, product version, API version. You can upload this logo. Okay, so this one here. And you can use a configuration authentication from the previous list, or just create a new one from here that will just give you the same option to create your authentication protocol. Let's close this, and finally you get the connectors created here. So you create a connector again, you'll get the category, then you just pick up the method and the authentication protocol configuration from the list. Again, the parameters, and then you will be ready to run your connectors. When it comes to the library, you can just click to the download button here, and this will load a list of libraries that we have. So you can just pick one of these, like for instance a Google Calendar. It will give you the connectors we have for Google Calendars. So like you can see here, you have list calendar, list events in my calendar, create a new event, update an event, get the event for ID, and delete the event. So you can just import these ones here by clicking on download, and this will just download the connector to your connectors list. Take a look. I will just click on download all. That's it. I'll say close, and there are the connectors you have. You can just edit one of these and set some specific parameters you will have to use. For instance, like here, you can add your JSON or your body form, and then you would be able to use these connectors. So we're going to take a look into this in the lab just in a moment. So I'll just close this here. Let's get rid of this connector so we can see the labs, and we're going to do it with a clean list here. So I'll just remove my connectors from here, like that. And finally, we will also see in the labs what the service tasks are. So let's see here. Well, I'm just going to create this test for service task. Just create this, and you remember we have the task types here, so I would get something like this. So if you right click on a task, you have task type. We have been using user task, and we have service task and a script task. Remember, script task was for a task that will not require human interaction, and it will actually fire a trigger or a script. And we have the service task right here. See the marker on the top left corner, and if we right click on it and go to properties, you'll see this screen where we have the request configuration, and this will require to select a category, or this is the one we just added. The connector, we don't have connectors right now because I just removed everything. A description right here coming from the configuration, the method that will be set because of the or based on the connector, the URL, and you will be able to set all the parameters here to be sent for your connector. So this will return a response object, and you can get the information you need from that object coming in the response. So let's take a look into this with the lab. So I'll just get out from here, get out of here. Let's see. Let's remove those categories and authentication protocols. Connectors. Let's see what we have in category. Let's remove this Google Calendar. And let's also remove this Google service account. Okay, and okay, that's empty. And let's get back to the course and let's start with this lab. So let's start with this one, lab process maker connectors. I will open it here. And let's start by creating our authentication protocol configuration. Here it is. So we're going to register an application, and we will use that information in our protocol configuration. Okay, so take a look here. We're going to use the ones we just generated for the external application. So I'll get this from here. This is saved here. Okay, so let's get back to our lab. Let's create our new authentication protocol configuration. So let's just get here, and these are the settings that we're going to use. So let me close this one right here, and I will create my new protocol. Let's see, name protocol and sub protocol. So name is process maker. This is OAuth 2. This will be password for this example, and these are the settings we will use. Okay, so let's take a look at the settings. We're going to use this token credential URI. That will be the access token endpoint or method here. So let's just copy this one right here. Save. Okay. Grant type will be password. The scope will be again star. Like that. Client ID. Let's get the one from the notepad right here. Okay. Let's get this here. Okay, so let's get the client ID. Let's put it here. Let's do the same for the client secret. Client secret, this one for the client secret. Okay. Let's now use the username. Will be admin, and let's also add the password admin. So let's get back here, and these are all the settings we're going to use here, and then we'll say test. And as you can see, this will just tell us if this was able to successfully get the access token and log in. So again, now click on test, and there's the configuration test was successful. Let's just save this. There's my authentication protocol created, and let's get back to the lab here. And now we're going to create our category for process maker endpoints. So let's do the following. Let's add these settings. Let's get back to category. Let's say create process maker and process maker endpoints. Process maker endpoints. That will be 1 and let's see if we can get the logo. So we'll do this. let's say version 1, API version 1. Let's pick process maker authentication protocol configuration, and let's look for a logo. So I'm going to just get a quick logo from here. Okay, let's grab this one right here. Save it here, and let's browse it. Here it is. And now let's just save this, and there it is. So if you click on edit, there are your settings. Now you have your logo included and all the information you just added. For this category that we'll be using the process maker authentication protocol. So let's save this, and now we'll go to connectors, and let's get back to the lab. Let's continue here. Here's the connector, and these are the settings we're going to use for our new connector. So name will be department information. Department information. This is the description. Category will be process maker. Path. Let's use this URL, and this will consume, or will call, the assigned user method for departments. So let's see this here. Method will be get. The URL, the configuration for the authentication protocol will be process maker, of course. Let's scroll down a bit more here. The author will be process maker, and that will be it. Let's take a look here. I'm not going to send parameters right now, and this will be process maker. Let's test this. Let's see. This is what we have here. Right here. And let's finish this. Just 1 second. Let's first save it. Okay, there it is. I'll edit it, and there are the settings. You can see now creation date was calculated. Let's save this. We're going to run the test in the next lab for the service task. Okay, this one's done. And now let's take a look into the service tasks. Here, there it is. And for this, we are going to create a new process. So let's create our new process. This will be department information. This is how the process will look. So let's create our 3 tasks here. Get the pool, the lane. So let's add 3 tasks. There. This one's user. This one's also user. Okay. Select department. This is obtain users, the list of users from a department. And display list of assigned users. Like that. Let's just get this aligned. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, now let's create our variables for the process, and we'll have the department for the department that we'll be selecting with the department info that will have all the information from the department that has been selected, and the result and the user's grid to see the response from the connector. So let's start with department. This will be string. Let me double check the names. Okay. This is department. Then we have this object type variable, which is department info. And this is the object, or this is the one that will store the object returned by the connector. Then we have the result, which is a string, and the user's grid, that it's a grid. Result. Let me edit this one. It's going to be info like that. And this is user's grid. And type will be grid. Okay, so that's the variables. Scroll down a bit, and let's create our Dynaforms. So this first Dynaform will be department selection, and the description. This Dynaform is used to select a department. Let's save and open. And we're going to create these three web controls: the title, a dropdown, and a submit. So let's get this title, drop down, and submit. Department selection, department, and submit. Okay, let's get back here, and in the SQL property we're going to add the query to get the list of departments. Let's get this here, department SQL property. Okay, so let's just add this query here, and this will get the department UID and the department title from the department table. So let's just save this and let's test it and see if we're getting the list of departments. Here it is. Okay. Let's create our another Dynaform where we're going to show the results or the list of users assigned to the selected department. So let's just create a new one and use this title and description. So let's save this. Let's create a new one. And this is list of assigned users. Okay. And let's add our web controls here. We have the title, the grid, and the submit button. The title. Oh, sorry. Let's get this out. The title, the grid, and this will be for the users grid and the submit button. Oh, sorry, here. Like that. And we'll say list of users from the department, list of assigned users. List of users, and then just submit. Okay. Then we have the grid fields, and there will be just 5 text boxes. For UID, username, first name, last name, and status. So let's do this right here. Take a look. Okay. Okay, so the first one was UID, and UID size was 40. Then we have username. This was username, and size was 15. Let's just double check. Then we have first name, which is also 15. Last name, and status. Okay, so we're done with the grid. Just going to save it and get ready for our triggers. Let me scroll down here. So let's save this one right here, and let's create our triggers. So let's get this description, and my trigger will be convert users list. That's my description. Open the editor, and this is the trigger I have here. Let's take a look into the code, and you will note that we are getting this result variable that is a string, and it's coming from this department info and the user UIDs. So remember, department info was an object variable, and we're just setting its a message property with the user ID coming from the connector, and then we're just doing for each to loop through all users or all objects inside this, and we would just then get the properties for each user and load it one by one in our users grid variable. So once this is done, this would just load the users returned from the connector into the grid in the second form. So we can just copy this code, and there it is. Let me save this trigger. Okay, and let's continue. Okay, so now we're going to change or set our second task to be a service task, and just like we did before, we're just going to right click on it, say task type, and click on service task. There it is. That's the service task. And now we need to click on the properties. So we're going to right click on the task and go to properties here. And now let's pick our configuration. So let's get up here. Let's get some views here. And this is what we're going to set. So category will be the one we created, process maker. There it is. Connector will be the department information. Method will be get. This method will be get. That's okay. Configuration authentication protocol will be process maker, and the path parameters will be this department, which is the variables for the URL we have here. That means this one, department UID. So let's put that here. Path parameters. Say edit, and will be department there, and the return variable will be department info. Okay, let me get it from here like this. Variable to hold the response. Here, and let's just paste that there. Take note on how I'm calling this variable, because it's expecting to receive an object. So this is why I'm using add, or the lab is using add, and the ampersand here. Okay, so I'm just going to click on test, and I'll send a department ID, and we'll see if this gives us the right response. So this is a valid ID. Let's see if we can use this in the test. So let's say test. Let's edit the department to this ID. Let's save this, and let's click on test. So there is, this is getting the users from this department. Or you can get the department IDs from the list, right? So I'm just going to close this and save settings here and close this. Let's get back here. Here it is. This is the response we just got. Close this and let's go to the next page. So now we're going to add and configure our process. I'm going to add the steps and the trigger we have. So first one will be adding the department selection to the first task, and then for the second task we'll add the other form and also the trigger. So for the first one we'll just right click here, steps, get the department selection, and that will be it. And for the last task we'll right click on it, go to steps, and this will be the list of assigned users. But before this form loads, we will convert the response to a list and send it to the grid. So that's it here. And then we just need to assign our user and run the case. So I'm going to add the administrator to the first and third task. So service tasks doesn't require to have a human interaction or users assigned to the tasks, because it would just get the information from the connector and continue with the flow. So let's assign the user here. Okay, and let's take a look into this. This is just the example on how the process should run. So we will create a new case and select a department. Then we'll continue, and let's see how this will actually behave. So here we are. Now I'm just going to say here home. I will say new case. And here's my department information process. I'll double click on it. Let's see what happened here. Let me see why we're getting this message. And let me see, I just want to make sure. Oh, sorry. Maybe it's because of the query here. Just let me take a look. I'll get rid of this for a second. Okay, something's going on here. Let me put back the query here. I'm suspecting it to be a missing table, so I'm going to run all the commands we ran yesterday. So let me get here to OPT process maker. Okay, let's try it again. let me do one quick change. To the log here. Nothing there. Okay, let me do a really quick fix here. Let's see. I'm actually unable to create a case with any process. Let me see what happened with my installation. Okay, so these are the last steps from the lab. Let's do the following. I'll give you a couple minutes to continue finishing the lab, and I will be back in Okay guys, so let's continue. It looks like well, something happened on my server. I'll have to take a look into this after the course and get it ready for the next session that will be tomorrow. But in the meantime, since we are almost at the end of this lab, it will just this process will just run a case. Will give us the option to select a department from the drop down in the first Dynaform. Then it will tell us, as you can see here, the routing screen now is telling us that the following task or case will be a service task. This one will retrieve the information using the connector and will show us the result of the users assigned to a department in the next Dynaform. So we should be getting a list of users in that department. For instance, in this lab, we're using the finance department, and that will give us this result of users. And then we'll just continue with the process and finish the case. So that will be it for this lab. I will finish this one here. And let's close this tab right here. Okay, so let's go to our next lesson. And in this part, we are just, for today, we're just going to work on the first two labs, and we'll continue working in the rest of the labs tomorrow in our last session, and then we'll take a look at the administration of Process Maker tomorrow. So today, we're going to continue with these two labs right here. So let's open this link here, and this is the documentation for what we have been doing already with Postman, that was calling REST endpoints. And let's take a quick look here. Let's scroll down a bit here, and here we have some examples on how we will call our REST endpoints using PHP code or using JavaScript code or jQuery code. So if we take a look here, again, the concept will be just the same. We have the server here that will be called. We're going to use this getAccessToken method. Once we get the access token, we just send that token as the authorization bearer for this endpoint. Then we'll just use URL to call our endpoint. And once we get the response, we get the status code. And if this is a non-successful response, then we will show our errors here, right? But if it's a 200 option or response, then we just get our results here. But this is because we're just doing a GET request, right? We're just getting information from our process maker. What if we use POST and we need to send variables to our server? So in this case, let's take a look here. Until this part, we have the same call to the URL, but now we will have to build our body data that will be going to the form data format. That will be this array with the variables and the values to be sent. And this time, since it's a post, we'll have to do this the URL post and post our fields sending our array. Will be almost the same case for put, and the method will be just changed here to use put instead of post, like we did up here for post. So here's an example. Take a look into delete. For delete, well, it's like the get method. We're not going to send any form data nor variables array, so we'll just call the endpoint and use the access token here. Here's the method to delete, and that will be it. And here are examples for JavaScript. So you can use these JavaScript examples to use or consume endpoints using your connectors within your Dynaform. So you can, if you need to get some information from the system in your Dynaforms, you can just use these examples to load your information. And since this will be getting the object, the response object, you will be able just to parse it and include it in your Dynaform web controls. Here's also the same examples for get, post, put, and delete, which are the four methods that Process Maker supports right now. And let me take a look down here. I think we will be ready to run our external application lab. So let's close this one here, and let's take a look into this lab here. So let's open this first lab, which is the preliminary arrangement. We'll open this one here. Here it is. And let's take a look here. This is the vendor registration process that it's already installed in your virtual machines. So if we take a look here in the designer, we have this vendor registration process here. Here it is. So we're going to set this process just as it is in the lab. So take a look here. We're going to make these three users to be user tasks. So let's just change this task type to user task. This one would also be user task, and same for this one. That's it. That's our process. We're going to add this artifacts here, like the vendors DB for the database. So let's just add the artifact from here. This will be vendors DB. I will just add this. Oh, sorry. Here. And that will be it. Let's continue. Let's take a quick read here. Don't forget to assign the admin user to each task. So let's assign the admin user to each task. Go there to admin. There's the admin, and there's the admin. Okay, and let's go to the next page. Okay, so now we need to create our external application web page, and we're going to just use the code we have here. We have three different files that we will be using for the header and footer and the body of our starting web page here. So let's just go inside this path in our server. Let's go here. Now let's clear this, and we'll just go to the Apache default site. Here, and let's take a look here. Here we have this index.php file, and here we're going to actually create this header and footer HTML pages, and we'll use this code we have down here. So let's start creating this header HTML. I will just copy this code and let's create this HTML. I will paste this here, and that will be it. This page will be used for all the headers in my external application. That's why we're just splitting this code here. So let's close this, let's save it, and there it is, header. Let's do the same for the footer, and you'll see the footer is just closing the labels we had in the header. So let's just go here and say footer.html. Let's paste this here and save it and close it. Okay, that's it. And now we're just going to create the authentication form. That will be a page that will require or will ask us to fill in the client ID, the client secret, the scope, and the parameters to get the access token. So for this, we're just going to add this code inside of, let me get this here, inside our index.php file. So let's get this code to here. Oh. Let's see what happened here. Okay. Let's open the index file. There it is. I'll just get rid of this here and paste it there. There's the include ones for the footer, and up top we have the header. And it would just be the form. Let's just save this one right here, and that's it. And we should be able to take a look here in localhost and take a look. This is the page we just built right now. So this is the header, the footer, just to close the tags, and the form in the middle. So as you can see, this is just requesting us to enter the server URL, the workspace name, the client ID, the client secret, and the parameters for the password grant type, the username and the password for a user. So I'm going to just get back here. You can close this right here. Scroll down and let's continue. So this is exactly what we were seeing, and this is the page we will be using for our external application. So at the moment we cannot log in, of course, because there's no code that will allow to do the authentication. So we would just have to continue with the next lab. So let's say finish here, and let's close this window and get back here. Okay, so let's take a look into the next lab, and will be the last one for today's session. And this one will be getting a user's inbox case list. So let's open this one here, and here's the code that we will be using. And as you can see, this would just be getting us the access token to log in and work in our system. So take a look here. Let's scroll up here, and we're going to create this new file, execute rest.php. So I'm just going to get here, and I'll say execute rest.php. Let's get back to the lab, and let's copy this code. And let's copy this. Okay, so here's the explanation on what this code will exactly do. Okay, so we're getting access, of course, to our method. We'll use the access token. Here, as you can see, we have just the URL, our method, and this will be coming from the authentication form, which is created in the starting page. We have the method that will be get, the data that will be in the array, the data, and the access token. Then we're going to establish or create our URL. As always, we will be using authorization, bearer, and the access token we should get. And then we will just see, depending on which method we are using, we're just going to define which method we will send to our URL object. And finally, we will just execute our URL session based on the parameters we just filled in or defined up here. And depending on the response, we will return or give an error if the call was not successfully done. So let's get the code inside, this file here. So let's take a quick look. Here it is. Here we go in the parameters. We're just seeing which method we will use here. Then we will execute the call and see if we got an error. Otherwise, we will just return our response from this URL. Okay, so let's save this here, execute REST. Let's get back to the lab and let's go to the next page here. And we're going to create our login script to log into the system with the parameters we just get. So let's take a look into this code. I'm going to just copy it first. Let me get this from here to here. And let's copy this login.php file. So I'll say nano.php. Let's paste this here. And let's save this. And now let's take a look into what this code will do. So this is the function getAccessToken. If we go back to the other file, we will also call it this getAccessToken function right here. And take a look, we are just getting our parameters here to log in. And take a look here, the scope will always be star, the grant type will always be password, and the only thing we're getting from the form will be the client ID, the secret ID, the user, and the password. And for the URL, we are getting the URL set in the form and also the workspace. So this will create our access token endpoint and send the parameters for this access token to give us actually the access token as the response. So the response of this will be that JSON object including the access token, the token refresh, and the scope and the expired date. So we will just continue here. Let me save this file. Okay, file saved. Okay, let's continue here. And now we're going to create our files to retrieve the information from the endpoint, so we can get this user's cases list in the inbox. So for that, we're going to use this list.php file, and let's get this code copy here. Let's just get back here and let's create the nano list.php file. Okay, let's save this here and let's take a look into this code. Okay, so take a look right here. This is the part where we are going to run this REST connection. So it would just start a new session variable. It will run, or it will call this execute rest.php file, which is the one which is created to execute the REST calls. Then we are getting the information from the session we just created, like the URL, and we will just build our own link for the endpoints. So it will not be like the first one we created for the access token URL. This time we'll be creating the URLs for the endpoints, for the specific endpoints, and in this case we will be calling the cases method right here. And then we will just bar dump the cases list. That will be the response of the execute REST function. So what about the HTML code in this page? As you can see, this is just drawing a table that where we will be including the case number, the case title, the process task, the sent by user, the priority, and the due date. And this would just fill the table with the response we'll get in the cases list response that just came up here. And it would just draw all the lines or the rows returned for this user's inbox. Let's continue here. So right now, if we run a new case, unfortunately I will still have issues with this vendor registration process, but let's take a look into this. We will be running a new case. We will fill the information in this Dynaform, and we will just continue. That means that at this moment, a new case should have been sent to the admin's inbox in the second task. So if we log in using our external application, we should see our case in the cases list that has been returned. So again, take a look here. We should get the client ID and the client secret from the first lab we did, and we get this saved in a notepad. Sorry, that's what we're going to use for this external application. And then we should see our task listed in our external application. So let's take a look into it. So like I said, I need to fix the issue I had some moments ago. What I'm going to do is just list this case I have here. As you can see, I have some cases, or well, actually one case in my inbox, and this is the one I'm going to show in the external application. So what I'm going to do is just use the application. So I'll say here localhost, and I would just fill this form like this, and I would get my case listed in my page. So I will say HTTP process maker. The workspace will be workflow. The client ID will come from this file. This is the client ID here. Oh, the client secret will be this one right here. The username, let's use the admin, and the password will also be the admin. So I will log in. Let's close this one and take a look right here. This is the case I have right now in my inbox, and it's being shown here. So right now I have this open button, but this won't do anything because there's nothing developed yet for this. So we will have to add some code in order to use another endpoint and load the case information or case data. And we will also have to draw our Dynaforms in our external application to load the data from these cases and be able to continue working from our external application. And that's actually what we are going to do. Let me finish this lab here. Let's finish here and let's close this. And that's what all these 3 remaining labs are about. We're going to render our Dynaform. We will be loading data from our Dynaform, and then we will be saving and routing our cases from our external application. So we're going to leave these 3 labs for tomorrow, and we'll also leave for tomorrow this advanced administration of Process Maker server. So I'll give you a couple minutes in case you need to finish the labs, and I'll be back just right after those 2 minutes.